Welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Oregon steamrolls Portland State as part of the Pac-12's perfect opening weekend. We'll talk more about that. Also, we'll give you some Texas Tech predictions as the Ducks head out on the road for the first time this season. And then our good friend Dan Rubenstein, he'll join the program, share his thoughts on what the bigger stories are around the Pac-12 now that we've seen some pretty terrific quarterback play. But let's go ahead and get to our opening drive, brought to you by Capital Toyota, your way on the highway. And we bring in the finest three gentlemen I've ever done Talkin Ducks with, the only three I've ever done it with. Joey Harrington, Anthony Newman, from the Oregonian, Aaron Fentress. Joey, let's start with you. Your thoughts on Oregon. They just demolished Portland State. They hang up 81 points against the Vikings. And what's really the takeaway from this game, a game in which Oregon was just so dominant?
Okay. Anthony, question for you. Offense turn the ball over?
No.
Aaron, got a question for you. Anybody really get hurt?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Next. I mean,
you're right.
With the exception of the second drive on defense.
Yeah, correct.
There was a moment of like, ooh, okay, what's going on here? That was,
and then the home cooking started because my Vikings got robbed.
That was literally the only moment in the game where I even had a moment of pause. This was exactly what you wanted. It was clean. It was efficient. It was dominant on both sides of the ball, with the exception of that second drive. But they fixed it, right? Here we go. Move on. Texas Tech. Let's go.
Well, Joey talks about that second drive. They went down and scored. I don't know how many times I covered a game like this with Oregon, even back in, during the great run from 09 to 14, where you had a team come in that they're supposed to demolish and it's 7-7 or 7-0 them early. And that's usually because a team like this is going to script some plays. They're going to run their best plays. They execute the best, and they're going to come out and they're going to pound those plays and score. But then eventually they run out of plays. You can't go to the well too often. And the physicality just overwhelms you. This was about as perfect as a team could play in this situation. Every great Oregon team has demolished a team like this early in the season. You can't take away too much from it because you are overwhelming the other team. But if you do so at such a near perfection rate, it says something about your execution level, your preparedness, the maturity of your team, that you just come out and you just play at such a high level, regardless of your opponent. So A+ for the Ducks, no doubt.
Well, I agree with both of you guys. Joey, you said it, no turnovers. You won the football game and no one got hurt. You move on, okay? We all understand that. But yes, I was also sitting in the press box in that first quarter, that second drive, watching Portland State kind of drive down there, and I was biting my fingernails going, okay, now we all talked about this defense and, see these guys on defense, the new guys, what are they going to do? Yet Portland State was still driving the ball down the field, and I was like, okay, stop the quarterback. He's running the football. But after that, it takes a minute. It's like, you go into a boxing match, you feel the guy out a little bit, and then you put it on him. And that's what Oregon did. You're right, Aaron. There's not enough depth for Portland State. They ran out of plays, and the defense took care of business. It was playmakers. And the defensive line. There's one thing that I'm looking at from a coaching standpoint, tackles for loss. There wasn't any. There was 3 tackles for loss, and 2 of those were by defensive backs. So one defensive lineman had a tackle for loss. You want more than that. You want to play on that side of the ball. But those are little things that they'll work out. The coaches understand that. They know that. The secondary played well. Nico Reed he's a baller. Another guy from Colorado that's playing well in the back end. It's a victory. You won the football game. Be happy and move on.
All right, guys, we'll get back to the game here in a little bit, talk about the offense and defense. But overall, these FCS matchups where Oregon wins by 74, and there really isn't any challenge whatsoever, how do we feel about these? Do we really get anything from this? Is this a benefit to Oregon when you look at what they're trying to accomplish this year, or is this something that they should look to kind of do away with as they progress into this new future of college football?
what's the value in the game like this for Oregon? Is it is the SEC plays these games mid-November? That's the value, is until the SEC decides that they're going to give these games up, then I don't think anybody else should give these games up, because it's just like we said, it's fine-tuning, it's staying healthy, it's giving guys a rest, it's I fail to see the value in scheduling, playing, let's pick San Jose, Nevada, somebody from the Mountain West. There's no value in that either, right? So you're not going to schedule 3 Ohio States. You're not going to schedule 3 massive non-conference games. So if it doesn't matter whether you play Fresno or Portland State, why not play Portland State? I don't know. I think it's not necessarily about the scheduling from each university as it is the setup of the entire college football schedule and what is valued come the end of the year.
So when they moved to 12 games, I really pulled back on the idea of not scheduling these types of games, and especially with the expanded playoffs coming up. One loss to a marquee program, if you were to add that instead of a Portland State, isn't going to hurt you. But also, do you need another game like that when you're going to be in a tough conference, which they're going to be? And the Pac-12 is tough too. And then if you do get in the playoffs, you got to win a bunch of playoff games to get where you want to go. Next thing you know, you're playing an NFL season. So I have no problem with a game like this. We talked about it last week. It's a preseason game. It's a tune-up game. It's a get your feet wet game. I think every team should schedule one team like this, and then like a Mountain West team. A few years ago, they played Portland State and I think Nevada, I think maybe in the same preseason. And then you schedule, I think it should be a team in the top 40 at least. Last year they had Georgia. In the past they played Auburn, LSU. I think that's the way to go. One easy team, and then one middle of the road team, and then one good team. And also, I kind of think the big daddies of the state should take care of their FCS, brethren in that state. This is a huge payday for Portland State. I don't think the score matters in the end. We all know that Portland State is going to be overwhelmed. It doesn't matter if it's 66-10 or 80. It doesn't really matter. They need that money. And if you take that away, that hurts that program. And like I said, Portland State at least gets a tune-up out of it. Or excuse me, Oregon does.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I look at it as a preseason game. It's a preseason game. You need this preseason game if you're going into your conference. And right now, looking at the conference, the Pac-12 is stacked. They got all these quarterbacks. They're scoring points. So you need a tune-up. You need to get some guys in there. And also, we talk about injuries. You're playing 12 games, getting banged up, trying to survive a whole season. Once you start training camp, those injuries don't disappear. They stay with you the whole time. So you can't go in and start the season going against Georgia, and then you're going to go against Ohio State. You can't do that. You lost your mind. What's wrong with taking, Aaron, you said it, what's wrong with taking care of the little brother, Portland State? Give him some money, pay him a little bit, have those kids get up for this game because they're saying, hey, I want to show the world or the country I can play against these kids from Oregon, so I have a chance to play in the NFL. Why not? Nothing wrong with that. As long as you're Oregon getting your guys off the field without getting injured so you can move on, then, it's a good situation. I don't mind playing a Portland State. I really don't at all. I think you need a Portland State or a team like that to play against as you go into the season.
Right. I'm curious what the justification or what the argument would be for taking this game away. I mean, is it because it's such a blowout it doesn't really matter?
It's overreaction to the blowout, yes.
I think you have to look at it in a global perspective. But like I said at the start, until everybody takes away the games, then Oregon doesn't need to be taking away these games. But also, the players on the opposite side have a realistic expectation coming into this game, right? They're not going in. Sure, does Appalachian State beat Michigan once in a blue moon? Sure, of course.
And Portland State beat Washington State like 8 years ago.
It does happen. But a lot of times, like you said, I can't remember, I think Anthony, you just said, it's an opportunity for us to see the Cooper Kupps, to see the Vernon Adams, to see the guys that come in from Eastern Washington, from Portland State, from whoever it is, right? And show up at Autzen Stadium and say, and show people that they can play. We saw it's a little bit different, and I'm sure we'll get there. We saw those players from Jackson State that came to Colorado and saw what they did this weekend, right? So, you bring it, someone says, well, why don't you schedule these smaller teams? Well, because Jackson State had a lot of kids who can play, right? So you get some of those kids from smaller schools to give them an opportunity to come and play in a big time school. It's good for them as well. Like, I think the benefits for Portland State outweigh the negatives of getting beat 81-7 or whatever it is, because the reality, do you want to go in and will you, if you're close at halftime, will you fight like hell? Of course you will. But the majority of people in that program know you're going in there to do the best you can, to see how you stack up, and then get ready for your own regular season.
Correct.
And get some cash along the way. Yes.
Yep.
All right, stick around. Plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. We'll take a closer look at the offense and defense after Oregon's Week 1 win over Portland State. We're just getting started. We'll see you here shortly. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
I love the competitiveness, the focus of our guys. We talked about what's a successful game look like. Not a lot of pre-snap, post-snap penalties. We did that. We didn't have penalties. We had a careless penalty on a hold, and we had a careless penalty on PBR. Those are two things that we got to fix. But walking out of the game clean from that standpoint, you love. I love the energy from our players on the sideline. A lot of things that we can fix. Being better on movements. From a defensive standpoint, I thought we tackled well in this game, but there were some missed tackles as well that we can do a better job of wrapping up. I think getting the ball to our outside arm on offense so we can work stiff arm opportunities to break the ball, to move the ball down the field, something we want to focus on, chasing the ball, better with our offensive line and our skill players when they don't have the ball in their hands, something we want to look to improve. We want to be able to connect on some of those shots that, we missed. We still move the ball well, but you avoid some of those third and longs that we hit and had success on when you're able to move the ball on those shots earlier in the series.
All right, welcome back. That was Dan Lanning talking about his team's dominant performance in Week 1. And with that, it's time now for Talkin' Numbers, brought to you by Par Lumber. And how good was this win? Well, Oregon set a modern-era school record with 81 points on 729 total yards. Both of these numbers led the nation in Week 1, by the way. Just how many points is that? Well, the Oregon men's basketball team only scored 81 or more points in 5 games last season, and the 74-point margin of victory is the most since a 97-point win over Willamette in 1916, which I think, Anthony, was your freshman season. But Aaron, let's start with you. How about this offense underneath new offensive coordinator Will Stein? It looked pretty impressive, looked pretty explosive. We also got an extended look at your boy, Ty Thompson. What was your takeaway from what you saw on the offensive side of the ball?
What stood out? I mean, offensively, you saw a lot of the same. I mean, I didn't. They're not going to show a lot in a game like this anyway, but I wasn't blown away by any scheme or anything like that. And you're going against a team that's giving you zero pass rush, and they can't cover your guys. So how do you evaluate that? I mean, like I said in the beginning, you want to play at a high efficiency level, which they did, but against pretty much zero resistance. So I'm not going to walk away from this feeling like the offense is definitely going to be better, or I saw signs of XYZ. I mean, Jordan James looks nice. Ty Thompson got to play. I want to see them open it up a little bit. Still a lot of the short passes and things like that, which we know Ty Thompson can already do. So I didn't come away with exactly what I wanted to see there, but that's of no one's fault, of course. I mean, you're rolling a team wide, open it up, and they scored anyway. So, yeah, I mean, I just walked away like thinking, yeah, I mean, the offense is, similar to what we've seen in the past, and they executed with perfection against a team that offered little to no resistance.
I think you and Dan hit it, on the head. Two penalties. One of them was a holding. 9 touchdowns on the first 9 drives. Bo went 23 for 27. Yeah, so if there's no pass rush and nobody's covering the guys down the field, you better be near perfect, and they were. Yeah, I don't know what they played Portland State. They looked really good.
Right? What do you do?
What's that?
It's like, what do you do with it? It was literally a step above 7-on-7. So it's hard for me to go, oh my God, they're amazing. But they were perfect against an imperfect team.
Yeah, and I think that would have been what we talked about last week. There would have been warning bells had Bo not completed 23 of 27? Had the defense given up more than just that second drive? And we didn't see those things. So I think you check the box, you move on and say, good, we're right where we should be.
And Anthony, you talked about this in the first segment. The defense, a little slow to start. Maybe you expect that in week one, but they finally got their footing while also missing some key pieces like Mace Funa and Evan Williams. What did you take away when you finally got a chance to look back at the film?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think the defense flew around. You saw 11 guys to the ball. That's relentless pursuit to the football. You didn't see a lot of mistakes back there. Broken coverages. You saw guys communicating. So that's what you want to see as a defensive coach. If you have some mistakes, you can correct them as you move on. One thing, being picky, I didn't see any sacks or a lot of pressures on the quarterback. Now, it was a running quarterback. He's getting out the way. You can't catch him. He's a guy that's pretty good. He can run pretty good. But, you're looking for, hey, are we going to get pressure on the quarterback? You need that moving forward in the Pac-12 where you're going against a lot of quarterbacks who can throw the ball and they can run and get out the pocket, and you got to slow them down. So if I'm looking for something that, hey, we need to really improve on, if I'm a coach, you got to get more pressure to the quarterback. And yes, I understand. The defense was probably very vanilla, but it's one-on-one. If I got a guy one-on-one, I got to beat him. I got to beat that guard. I got to beat that tackle. If I'm a blitzing linebacker, I got to beat that running back who's trying to block me. So those are the things I'm looking for that you can improve that as you move on.
I think Anthony is right on for this, actually, because we are going to see Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Shedeur Sanders, DJ Uyunglele. Like you go down the list of all the quarterbacks you're going to see in this conference, and defensively, Oregon is going to have to get pressure with a four-man rush. I mean, you simply cannot live in this conference with the talent at quarterback, bringing 5, 6, 7 guys in pass rush all day because you're leaving your DBs on islands. You're going to have to get a pass rush with four-man, or you have to get pressure with a four-man rush, and that's something that is going to have to improve, and I'll definitely be watching for that improvement this week against Texas Tech.
Stick around. When we come back on Talkin Ducks, we'll talk more about Deion Sanders in Colorado. Did they make you a believer as part of the Pac-12's perfect weekend to start the season? We'll discuss when we come back.
Bacon. Cheddar.
You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
What's up, Bubs? You believe that? You hold on. Oh no. Do you believe in that? Huh? Oh no. I read through that bull junk you wrote down. I read through that. I sifted through all that. Yeah. Oh no. Come on. Do you believe?
In what?
You don't believe.
I believe.
You just answered it. You don't believe. Next question.
I Orthodox about that. Throw me over here.
You don't believe.
Well, that was a heated Deion Sanders in the press conference after their huge win over TCU. And Aaron, let's start with you, the journalist. How big was this win for Deion Sanders in Colorado? And did it make you a believer when so many people were very curious to see if this radical process that he had coming in, 86 new players, and just being very open and honest about his intentions, was going to work? How do you now reflect after this impressive road victory where they scored one of the biggest upsets in week one?
First of all, as a journalist of 30 years, he should be fined. He should be suspended. How dare you call out a journalist? No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I love that. To me, if a reporter is going to write something negative and you win, you should be able to come back at him a little bit in a playful manner. Don't make it contentious. I've had such similar situations with coaches in the past, and it could be kind of fun and interesting. You're kind of going back and forth. It doesn't have to be personal. So I kind of liked what Deion did. This is a brash dude, man. And he came in and he said, hey, this is what we're going to do. And a lot of people scoffed. I myself had maybe 4 to 5 wins because I just didn't buy into how you can just overhaul a complete roster and be good out the gate. But they just went into the home stadium of a team that went to the national title game just last year. And granted, they lost a bunch of talent, but still, they went to the national championship game. And his son, Shedeur, who's the real deal, dropped 5'10". 5'10" passing. I don't care who you're playing. 5'10" is a lot of yards. They had 4 dudes with 100 yards or more, which I think is an NCAA record. I am absolutely a believer. I already wasn't his kid, but now I've seen all the receivers. I've seen their ability to make plays, the runs after catch. Oh my goodness, that offense is going to be a problem, especially in the Pac-12 where there's a lot of suspect defenses. Now, defensively, I don't know. We still have to see what they can do. I can see them losing a lot of games, 42-40 or what have you. But I'm at least a believer to the point where I think they have a chance to become bowl eligible.
Question for you, Aaron. Question for you.
Yo.
Completely agree with you on, the back and forth. And hey, if you write something negative, then, you got to take it. My understanding of that is that Deion then didn't let him ask the question.
Right. That's the one thing I definitely will say. He should have come back to him and let him ask his question. And Ed Werder even said, "Can I ask my question?" I think Deion was caught up in the emotions of everything and just, played the whole next question thing. That's cheesy. Like, don't do that. You can clap back at us if you want, but at least allow us to do our job, which is to ask you questions. So 100%.
That was my point of clarification. Is he's just trying to do his job. You may not like it, but trying to do his job. Here's my take on the whole thing. They looked fantastic. They really did. My question, and am I a believer? As Deion says, I believe in his ability to motivate his team. I believe in his ability to connect with the locker room, to instill that belief in his players, and that's huge. I'm curious to see how it plays out long term, right? Because when you've got Travis Hunter playing 128 snaps, 128 snaps. Now that may be great for the first 5 games, first 6 games. You're 4-1, you're 5-1. What happens at the end of October? What happens into November? Like,
when he's played the equivalent of 20 games.
2 full seasons. Like, that's a lot of wear and tear. And I'm curious to see what kind of depth they have. I'm curious to see if it's sustainable. Count me in that. Was I anti-prime in Colorado and turning it around? No, I thought that he would have an immediate impact. Did I think he'd have a 10-win impact? No, but I could, coming into it, I could see I think we talked about it, an 8-5, 7-5, 8-4 kind of flip. I'm curious to see how this plays out, because I could see it, like I said, being a 4-1 start and then finishing the season 8-4, right? Just because of injury.
8-4. If they go 8-4, that's coach of the year, miss.
Oh, I mean, but
regardless,
these first couple games, if I looked at their schedule correctly, they've got three winnable games, and then they've got Oregon, and they've got, is it Utah? I think on the road. They've got, or SC, they've got a couple big ones here early. So I think there's an opportunity to have a comeback to reality moment. And then I'm curious to see how they hold up depth-wise over the length of the season, because you simply cannot have your guys out there for 128 plays. It's not sustainable, no matter how good Travis Hunter is.
Oh, and I agree. I mean, we talked about this during the spring. How many games did they win last year? 1? Okay, so we all talked about they're going to win more games. That's you're going to win more than 1 game. I guarantee you that. I said around 6 games. They may get 5-6 games. Looking at their schedule, they have some dudes. There's no doubt about it. They have some dudes, but who's behind those guys? What's the depth like? So when you play a USC, when you play an Oregon, when you play a Utah. Okay, now you got to play 4 quarters of football. Playing 120 snaps, hey, prove me wrong. Show me that you can do that for the whole year. I mean, I don't know. It hasn't been done yet. Go ahead and prove us all wrong, because I want to see you do that.
You do that for the entire year. You hand him the Heisman. I mean, that is.
Yeah. Right now, he's the front runner right now, just on what he did in that one game. I would say he and Deion's son. The depth in the trenches is what, can flip this thing in a nanosecond. Yep. If you lose some linemen, all of a sudden Shadur is running for his life. And the defense is already on the suspect list. It's not like they won 45-10. They won 45-42. So
Right.
the defense is already suspect going into a conference with a lot of good offenses. So, some people were talking about, how long till an NFL team comes and gets them and all this kind of nonsense. I'm like, oh my God, it's one game. They barely won. Like, stop. But, man, entertainment factor.
Oh, yes.
That was fun to watch. And if you got a dude at quarterback, we all know that changes everything. And he's got a dude.
All right, while Colorado clearly stole the headlines for the opening weekend, of course, the Pac-12 would have a perfect opening weekend in its final year of existence. Aaron, let's kick it back to you. What did you take away from the rest of the conference as a whole now that we've had a chance to see every single team take the field?
Yeah, I watched a lot of about maybe 5 or 6 games, especially USC and UW. I wanted to see Caleb and Penix. Wow. Man, those guys are, I mean, we already know they're good, but just watching them again for the first time in 11 months or 10 months, whatever it's been, just ultra impressed. They're going to be a problem for everybody again. Obviously, Penix just has a cannon. And the team that kind of was a little bit disappointing was UCLA. You expected more from them against a Coastal Carolina. But still a strong weekend for the conference. Everything that we thought it was going to be coming into the season, week 1, definitely stood up to that. And you mentioned DJ. Yeah, he had a couple touchdown runs, looking like a fullback from the quarterback position. I've called him Cam Newton, poor man's Cam Newton. He's definitely going to do big things for the Beavers this year.
I was curious to see how DJ played. I really was. And I don't know that I would say I think that he answered a lot of the questions that I had, but he was never under any pressure. Never. He literally had all day to sit there and throw the football. And so I'm curious to see how that goes. But Oregon State absolutely has a guy who can win games for them this year. I was happy to see Cal. I was happy to see Arizona State, because, look, I'm rooting for the whole pack. I'm rooting for the whole conference this year. I really am. I hope we go, 12-0 over 12. I hope we go 144-0. That would just be fitting for a year in which,
I mean, they play each other, so I'm not sure the math works on that.
Yeah, no, we're good. I
thought.
checked. It's science. We're good. It's not math. It's science. So,
okay, sorry.
Look, it is arguably the most talented year in the conference, in a year where we're going away. So yeah, I'm thrilled. Go beat them all.
Wouldn't it be crazy if we had a Pac-12 team playing a national championship game, and then next year there's no Pac-12 conference? Like, what the heck? That's crazy. But here's one thing. I say this, and I always say it. Defense wins championships. So playing in the Pac-12, you have all these teams that can score 45 points or more. So now you have to have a defense that at least can hold a team to maybe 35 or 30, okay? So who has the better defense in the Pac-12? Whichever team has the better defense is going to win the Pac-12. I'm telling you that right now.
So Anthony, did you see the Florida-Utah game?
Yes.
Okay. Was that Florida's bad offense or was that Utah's good defense? Because 11 points, that's a pretty good defense right there. And to win that game without your starting quarterback, that could be a good football team right there.
I'm going to go with the pass. They've always had a good defense. So 11 points, you hold anybody to 11 points, Joey. You know this. Anybody in today's game to 11 points, you have a good defense.
All right, stick around. When we come back, we'll give you our Texas Tech preview. We'll hear from Dan Lanning and give our thoughts on Oregon's first road game of the year. You're watching Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. It's time now for Made of Metal, brought to you by Leatherman.
Really excited about this week's opponent. They've proven to be one of the best teams at home. Obviously going to be a really unique environment. Really talented on offense and really on both sides of the ball. Got a really good front, interior, that can create some issues. Wide receivers on the edge that can create some issues, and a quarterback that operates really well in their system. So, and they play well at home. So it's going to be a fun environment for our guys. I think they're amped up to travel and go play a good team.
You mentioned tough environment, also the temperature down there. I'm wondering if there are any things you're going to do to kind of try to simulate the sound and also the heat.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot I can do for the Heat. We're not going to make the guys wear parkas out to practice or anything like that. At the end of the day, good, right? Good. We want a tough environment. We want to go to a place that's going to be challenging. Like that's what's exciting about college football. When you get to go to a place where the fans are going to care. 6 p.m. I think they're going to be pretty amped up. That's exciting for us. That's the kind of environments we want to play in. Beyond us preparing, that's all we got to do.
Well, that was Dan Lanning on the environment they'll face in Lubbock on Saturday. And Joey, let's take a look at this. You're on the road, 90 degrees plus, and even though Texas Tech lost in double overtime on the road in Wyoming, this is still a pretty good Texas Tech team led by former Duck Tyler Shuck, and he's maybe looking for some revenge against the green and yellow. So what do you see heading into this game? How big of a threat is Texas Tech?
Yeah, but okay, I'm gonna challenge that here. Do we know that it's a good Texas Tech team? I mean, let's be honest. It's the conversation we had at the start of the show. You schedule the Wyomings, you schedule the San Jose's, because they're kind of just like a meh, all right. If you lose that meh, all right, to that meh team, are you a good team, right? I don't know if Texas Tech is a good team. I know that the atmosphere is going to be fun. I know that it's going to be hot. But if I put those three things together, Texas Tech, atmosphere, and temperature, the only thing that I really have to worry about is myself, right? Doing my job, making sure I'm hydrated, making sure I'm focused, making sure I'm communicating with my teammates on the road and doing the things that I need to do. I don't know. I could be completely proven wrong, and this could, it could be a fluke. All right, the 81 points against Portland State could, be a fluke, and losing to Wyoming could be a fluke, and Texas Tech could surprise me. But I don't think they're as good a football team as Oregon is. So I think the way that they hang into this game is through those two things: crowd and heat. Do your job, hydrate, stay focused. And they should be coming out of there with a convincing multi-touchdown win, in my opinion.
I watched almost that entire Texas Tech Wyoming game, and man, the first quarter I was thinking, ooh, I can't wait for this Texas Tech Oregon game because Texas Tech looked really good, and then they fell off dramatically. Still, at the end of the day, Tyler Shuck threw for 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, but man, they just didn't look very sharp. But we all know that teams can make a huge jump from an execution standpoint from week 1 to week 2. That's why you play that first game. We talked about the advantages of playing a lesser team where you can fine-tune things against. So if they come out and they play at a higher level from an execution standpoint, this could be an interesting game. The thing that shocked me was after watching Oregon against Portland State and then watching Texas Tech, I'm thinking this is going to be like a 16-point line. It was 7.5, and then it moved to 6.5. I think it's 7 now. So the wise guys in Vegas aren't buying it, right? Right? The wise guys in Vegas are saying Texas Tech is going to be in this to win it. So I do agree with you, Joey, that Oregon's definitely more talented. I just think it's so early in the season that we just aren't sure yet who is whom. And so this easily could be a situation where Texas Tech comes out, they fine-tune some things, and it's 28-27 in the third quarter. I want to point out one thing. There's a list of names for you. Danny O'Neal, Joey Harrington, Masoli, Thomas, Mariota, Herbert, Tyler Shuck. 7 quarterbacks at Oregon who led their teams to conference titles. Although the 2020 COVID season, a little tainted, but whatever. Tyler Shuck was the quarterback that year. So he's the first quarterback in the history of the program to start against Oregon after having led them to a conference title. Just a little fun fact there for you. And I cannot imagine that he does not want to win this game extremely badly, because basically what happened with him is Mario Cristobal told him, we're going to go with Anthony Brown as 1A, you're 1B, you can compete. And Shuck was like, dude, I just led the conference in passing efficiency as my first year as a starter, my sophomore year. Now you're blowing me out like this? So he bailed. So I'm looking for a revenge game from Tyler Shuck. We'll see if he can get it done.
Yeah, some good points. But I think Texas Tech, they are who they are. We saw who they are. I watched them also. And I wasn't impressed. Yeah, the offense threw the ball. Yeah, Tyler threw the ball all over the place. You got some dudes who can run. But, and again, Wyoming ran the ball all over the place. They couldn't stop the running back who was slow as molasses. Okay, now you're going into this game with maybe 3 running backs. Noah Whittington may play. 3 running backs for Oregon and an offensive line Oh, I think they can run the ball very well. And when I watch the Oregon running backs, it's not about the scheme. It's not about that the linemen create holes. It's about these running backs breaking tackles, yards after contact, their vision, their balance, blocking for the quarterback, catching the balls out of the backfield. So for Texas Tech's offense, you're going to be sitting on the sideline because Oregon's going to run the ball down your throat. You won't be playing. You don't have to worry about heat and altitude and everything else because you're sitting on the sideline. Your band is
Texas
quiet.
altitude.
So, hey, I think it's going to be a blowout. I really do.
And then, guys, how important is this game for Oregon's college football playoff aspirations? It's going to be their most challenging non-conference road game, but outside of Hawaii and Portland State, they're going to have to rely on the meat of their conference schedule for these quality wins. So how important is this win for Oregon if they want to stay in the hunt here this early in the season?
Well, if you want to go to playoffs, almost every game is a must-win except for one Pac-12 loss. If you lose this game, you got to run the table. But I don't believe that if you lose this game, you're capable of running the table in the Pac-12. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a no-brainer. You got to win this game if anyone's going to believe you have a chance to make the playoffs.
I'm going to go a step further, Aaron, and say that in order to truly earn the respect at the end of the year, this can't be a close game, right? You can't look back on this and how many times have teams played a game at the beginning of the season that seemed like a solid non-conference win, and then you look back and that team they played ended up finishing like 6-6. I think that's this Texas Tech team. Right? So when you look back at the end of the year and see a win against a Texas Tech team, it better not be 35-31, right? It better be 45-17. Like this needs to be something that moves the needle at the end of the year if you want to have the flexibility to get into that playoff. Because as we all know, if they're going to make a decision between a Pac-12 team and anybody else, it's going to go to anybody else if you give them that reason.
Make a statement. Beat them by 30 in their house. You do that, you move on.
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, Dan Rubenstein, friend of the show from the Solid Verbal, will join us. He'll share his thoughts on the Pac-12's perfect weekend and what he sees in this matchup against Texas Tech. We'll be right back on Talkin Ducks.
Bacon. Cheddar.
You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. All right, now joined by our friend Dan Rubenstein. And Dan, week one for Oregon. Did we learn anything else other than the fact that Oregon is a lot better than Portland State?
Yes, though I don't know how important it is that we learned other things because it's Portland State. So, look, we learned that the Rubenstein offense should be really fun, even though I don't think we saw a lot of what we will see over the course of even this coming weekend against Texas Tech, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and the Pac-12 season. We sort of learned that there's going to be a lot of similar elements to what we saw last year from Kenny Dillingham with some interesting new wrinkles from Rubenstein. And we learned, especially when you look at the personnel that was used on defense, that even early on in that game when it was quote unquote still in the balance, that Oregon put in a lot of freshmen. That it seems like there's a lot of confidence in the freshmen, especially along the defensive line, to rotate in and out over the course of this season in high leverage moments, high leverage drives. And so I think that's telling about where the Oregon, especially the defensive staff, but the coaching staff in general, feel like this freshman class already is.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up because years past, you would see the freshmen sparingly maybe in the second half of these early games, but the fact that these guys are getting reps now, I always say it helps them expedite the process to becoming sophomores later on in the season where you might need one of them to start due to injuries and just the length of the season.
Yeah, if you're able to build depth as a college football team, and like it's one of those things where you see what Alabama's able to do, what Georgia, when they're blowing teams out, then the 2s and 3s are getting a lot more experience. So when they do become starters, to your point, they have the reps, right? Instead of playing 8-12 plays at the end of a game, if they've played 30 snaps or something like that, the coaches can diagnose technique. They're just more comfortable on the field, and it's just a huge win for a team that Oregon wants to be down the line.
A lot of action, of course, in week one, but I think the story that reverberated across the nation is what Deion Sanders did at Colorado. I think a lot of us tuned into that game because we were really curious. All right, What is this Deion Sanders-led team going to look like? There's been a lot of hype, a lot of talk. And I think after the first quarter, regardless of the direction the game was going to go, you became a believer. You saw the discipline with this team. And for them to go out and win the way that they did, reconstructing this offense and this roster that they did last year, I mean, what is your takeaway? We haven't seen anything like this in college football as far as the hype, the excitement, the energy, and just the general surprise of what we saw from Colorado in week 1.
Yeah, I think buy-in and confidence go a long way, that if players are focused, if players are aligned, if they understand the intentions of an offense or the intentions of a defense, that it can take you pretty far. And this Colorado team specifically has pretty terrific offensive skill talent. We saw it with Travis Hunter going 2 ways. We saw it with Dylan Edwards coming out immediately and looking like a game changer. It was Joe Horn Jr. At receiver, the transfer from South Florida. Like, you're seeing it from a lot of different guys in that part of the offense. What their line looks like over the course of a season, what Shedeur Sanders looks like against better defenses over the course of a season, what the defense looks like over the course of a season if they have to rely on a backup nose tackle, if they have to rely on a backup safety, right? That's going to be tested probably sooner rather than later, just because they have USC and Oregon. I'm not super high on Nebraska at the moment, who they have this week, but it's going to be tested early on. Not to mention they have the most incredible two-way player in college football. Not that there's many of them, but in Travis Hunter, he's not going to play 120 snaps a week. And so what does it look like in terms of rest? What does it look like in terms of workload on offense, on defense? That to me is going to be fascinating. But no, this is a team that has the ability now, that has proven it has the ability to beat at least a decent team. And so we go from saying, and we talked about this last week, that they were both overrated and underrated. And they go from a team that looks like they're not constructed to go to a bowl game to, okay, what do they look like against USC? What do they look like against Oregon? Which is pretty fascinating. That said, TCU might not also be that good, right? TCU didn't have the tape, to be fair, but it might be a pretty dramatic step back year for the Frogs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Colorado handles that first bit of adversity this season and how they respond after that. We have all seen teams that are gangbusters when they're 3-0. I was on an Oregon team, right, that started 3-0, win over Oklahoma. We get slapped in the face against Cal, and the season goes off the rails at that point. So that's what I'm really curious to see with Deion and this team when they face adversity. You look at the Pac-12 here, Dan. Of all the years of this conference, to go undefeated in week 1, it's really fitting that they do it in their final year of existence. What other storylines stood out to you from this first week of play now that we had a chance to see everybody take the field?
Oregon State taking care of business like they did against San Jose State, who I still think is a pretty decent team, but DJU looking confident and had time to throw the ball downfield. I thought that was a nice story for the conference and for the Beavs. I thought Cal showing more than even just a heartbeat on offense. Starting quarterback goes down. They still drop 50 on the road, granted, against North Texas, but that's not a thing that Cal has done traditionally, even against overmatched opponents. So that was really nice to see with Ben Finley and Jaden Ott performing like they did. Washington looking like the top 10, top 8, whatever team that a lot of people have penciled in as a conference champion, and doing it against a Boise State team that I still think is well coached, has an interesting talent in Taylon Green at quarterback, and just blowing the doors off of the Broncos. It's not something I saw coming, and those receivers look lethal, and if that defense can hold up, they're that much scarier. So I thought it was an incredible long weekend for the Pac-12.
Yeah, I think you really saw how top-heavy this conference is going to be, and the fact that you now have 6 teams in the top 25 speaks to the depth when we're barely mentioning UCLA, right? And this is a very talented team as well, too, that might be 7th in the conference. So it should be a lot of fun as we learn more about these teams getting to week 2. And speaking of week 2, Oregon taking on Texas Tech. Maybe a little bit of luster is now off this matchup after Texas Tech loses to Wyoming in double overtime, but what do you see in this game as Oregon travels on the road for the first time this season?
First of all, opening up your season in Laramie is no joke. I think it's the highest altitude of any FBS city, and it was a tough defense. It was a quarterback who I didn't even think was that great for Wyoming, but he made plays when it counted, and the Texas Tech offense came out looking strong. They drive down the field successfully. They take advantage of a couple of short fields, a couple of mistakes from Wyoming, and then the offense sort of slowed down considerably. And so that paired with where I think Oregon is at, I think they have better players on defense than where they were last year, both via the portal and the freshmen coming in. I think they're deeper. I think they have a clear quarterback advantage in Bo Nix. I think they should be able to run straight at Texas Tech with this rushing attack, as I think the offensive line, granted, it's Portland State, but I think answered a couple of questions they look like they should have against Portland State. So I'm a little bit more confident in the offensive line in this moment. And I think Oregon is very clearly more talented.
Yeah.
And should they avoid dumb mistakes, right? A bad handoff here or a slip tackle there, something like that, I think they should comfortably win this game. Like you watch these two tapes, and I think the talent level of Oregon just jumps off in a way that I don't think it does for Texas Tech in this moment. So we'll see. It's a road matchup in a tough place, and you can't account for the energy that's going to be there in AT&T Stadium. But I don't know. I find a hard time figuring out how Texas Tech is going to win this game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Lanning puts on top of the whiteboard, no dumb mistakes. I love it. I think it's simplifying
mistakes.
coaching right there.
That's it.
That's all you got to do. All right, Dan, remind everybody where they can catch the Solid Verbal. Best place to catch you?
Solidverbal.com. It's Solid Verbal at a bunch of different social platforms, or youtube.com/@the Solid Verbal. We're putting a ton of stuff out there, and even if you don't like my face, my co-host Ty is a pretty handsome guy, so we're good to go.
All right, thanks again, Dan. You take it easy, man.
Thank you.
All right, big thanks to Dan Rubenstein for joining us. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll close up shop and give you our predictions for Oregon on the road at Texas Tech when we come back. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. It's time now for Victory Road. And Anthony, let's start with you. Oregon on the road at Texas Tech, taking on former Oregon quarterback Tyler Shuck. What's your key to victory in this one? And can you actually give us a score prediction?
Well, keys to victory, it's the simple things. It's the basic things in football. You come out, you run the football. You run it down the throat. You keep that Texas Tech offense on the sideline. Second, you don't turn the ball over. And in last game, there was no turnovers. You protect that football. Bo Nix, he may run a little bit. You have a running game of 3 good running backs. Only 2 played last week, but you have 3. Well, you really have 4. You got Bo Nix as 1 as well. And the receivers, be dynamic. Make some big plays, explosion plays. Defense, they're going to throw the football. Okay, they might not run it, but they're going to throw the football. So on the back end, you're about to be tested. This is a big test for you. Stand up for this test. See what you can do. See what you're made of. And this is going to be big for the D-line to get pressure on the quarterback if you can. Not with the linebackers, defensive linemen. There's 4 defensive linemen. Okay, make a statement. Show that you can play. Show that you can play against the big boys that are coming up in your conference and maybe going on to the playoffs. I think Oregon's going to win big. I really do. I think they're going to beat them by 30. I think this is going to be a big statement for them. And Texas Tech didn't look that good watching them play Wyoming.
Fentress, has he left us anything? I mean, he pretty much D-line, linebackers, DBs,
He's a point hog.
Quarterback, running back.
He's a hot
I
take
think
hog.
he hit all the points. No, the key for me is the efficiency. No turnovers and 2 penalties. If you go into a place like Lubbock and you're able to control the crowd, you can control the game. How does the crowd get into it? Giving the ball away, turnovers, holding calls, putting yourself in 3rd and long. Like, those are the times when the crowd starts to get involved. I mean, think of the Oregon student section. If it's 3rd and 15, back in the end, the end with the band, like, the students are on top of you. So do what you did against Portland State. Don't turn the football over. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. And I agree. I think they're going to come out with a, let's call it a 38 to 17, 21 type of win. I think it's going to be a 17-point win.
All right. Well, Newman, if they win by 30, that means the Ducks will do what I want to see them do. And I told you guys in the first show of the season, I'm going to be a broken record on this. I'm going to harp on this all season long, because if the Ducks want to win the conference, have a chance to make it in the playoffs, they have to develop a pass rush. Here's your first chance. You have a team that threw the ball 47 times last week. They have a suspect running game. Their quarterback is good, not great, but he's a big, strong kid who, like I said, Tyler Shuck, probably out to have a big game against his former team. You got to get after him. If you do, then yeah, they could win by 30. If they don't, it's going to be close, because Texas Tech will put up some points. I just don't think it's going to be close for very long, maybe into the second half. if they can't generate a pass rush, because I don't see Texas Tech stopping Oregon. Bo Nix is about to feast on this team. That running game is going to dominate. They score in the 40s. I've got Tyler Shuck and company getting to 27. How they get there will be interesting. I just want to see 4 sacks. Give me 4 sacks. Make me believe that this pass rush can get after a good passing program, and then I'll start to think that maybe they can win the conference. So first test for that pass rush coming up Saturday.
All right, fellas, great to see you again. Thanks for all your efforts. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget, you can catch the show on YouTube. Just look up Talkin Ducks, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Talkin Ducks Show for all clips throughout the entire week. Next week, we'll break down the game against Texas Tech and set up the matchup against Hawaii, Oregon's final non-conference matchup before the brutal Pac-12 schedule begins. From all of us here, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.